Hey, I'm live. Check this out. There's a woman actually getting water. It's not warm by any means. There she goes. Look at her go. Oh, well, she didn't stay in very long. She just jumped in. There she goes. She's just coming out right there. Good for her. I'm hoping to get in the water just a little bit later. Good for her. Good for her. She had that kind of a look on her face when I saw her earlier. She was, let me hang this up here. She didn't look like a regular. She was putting money in the meter. There's free parking all over the place, and anybody that's putting money in the meter right by the beach, I usually think, well, they must not be regulars because they don't know about the free parking. Anyway, she had that look. She was putting the money in, and she had a look on her face like, oh. But then I saw her walking down. We're the only two on the beach right now. I saw her walking down toward the water, and she had this look, and then she stood and just stared at the sea as people do, and I guess she decided to jump in. Good for her. I'm hoping to jump in myself this afternoon. I haven't been in the water since before I left for Japan. And it feels like it's time to get back in. I had COVID after I got back. I was real busy the first week. Then I had COVID. And I think I'm just starting to get back to it. My leg is also has trouble. So I don't want to be running too much, but maybe I can hobble and jump in. Anyway, good for her. I'm going to read a little bit of Going Alone as I typically do on Saturdays. And today this is a beat up old copy. Today I'm going to read the last bits. So the book kind of ends in a strange way. You know, I would say that the real meat of the book is in the first 20%, the first few chapters, really after the introduction, you know, the cast, the riding bridge, the path of wildness, going alone, the good life. Really, those are the meat and potatoes of the book. The introduction just kind of ramps up, and then the last bit kind of closes down. I tried my best, but I would say that these last bits were kind of brought about by brute force, not so much by not by the muse, right? It's a very different thing when the muse is writing, when the muse has the pen, than when I do. And of course, the muse is nothing but me, just under the influence of circumstance and life and inspiration, all that. Okay, so let's read the last bit. This shouldn't take me too long. So it begins with, you can see it's just a little bit here at the end, and we'll wrap things up. Final thoughts is the last bit. And there's I mentioned the woman standing looking at the beach. There's an image of me out in the desert, gazing in the direction of the sun. Final thoughts. And this chapter comes immediately after the chapter titled, My God is a Little God. Before I leave you alone. Going alone is less about going solo into wild places, or living tolerant of solitude, or without the warm blessing of family and friends, and more about a willingness to carry on through life with a positive, optimistic spirit in spite of the perceived void-like indifference of nature. It's about making life good and just and communal, where the responsibility for defining goodness is our own, resting on our own shoulders, with additional responsibility to live well and to also actively work to improve this good living with each passing day. That's exactly what I wanted to say. You are among this tribe if you do not shy away from what you find, or do not find, and more importantly, in the wild, or in solitude, or in the quiet moments alone with your mind. And if you decide instead to actively do something about these discovered facts in order to make something beautiful and meaningful of your brief life and days. And if you do this of your own volition mostly, not relying on others to pave over and civilize the wild with their own unfounded explanation, excuse, or dogma, then you will rise to your full stature as a person of reason, an individual of truth, someone both humbled and in awe of the uncertain night, and willing to live the good life in that dim, obscure place to the end of your days, or until discovery and effort at last reveal or produce some truer light. Continue the adventure at GoingAlone.org. Hold on. Where did she go? There she is. Good for her. Good for you. Coming down to the beach, probably the one you're not too familiar with, didn't know about the parking. walking out there with your clothes on, taking it off and jumping in with your swimsuit, and wow, I know just the feeling you're feeling right now. And actually, I take it back. That was exactly what I wanted to say when I set out to write that little bit. It was just a concluding bit, bam, bam, the blow to saying what the punchline of the damn book was, which is, and I have it highlighted here in bold, going alone to discover the indifference and then to create the good life. So those three words there that are highlighted in bold capture the absolute essence of what I'm trying to capture with this book. And then over here it says, be safe but not too safe. Okay, good. I'm happy with that. I'm just fine. That's perfect. As the sun comes beaming up, I like it. I'm glad that I had this experience, because for a long time I wasn't so sure about that one bit. I really feel more than ever that the book is done. Okay, now here's the epilogue. Okay, so there's like I said, this isn't the final chapter, it's the final bits. The epilogue, and this is a quote from Nathaniel Hawthorne from the House of the Seven Gables, probably my favorite book of all time. I added this in because it just captures, so it encapsulates my book in 3 paragraphs. Maybe it's 2 paragraphs. So the setting, you don't need the setting. The setting is you don't need to even know the story of the House of the Seven Gables. Here we go. Epilogue. This was observable when one of those Italian boys came along with his barrel organ and stopped under the wide and cool shadows of the elm. With his quick professional eye, he took note of the 2 faces watching. Now you need to know a little bit. In front of the House of the Seven Gables, there's a giant, great, magnificent elm tree. Right? It's a quiet little street, somewhere in Massachusetts. Quiet little street, and there's the old woman living in the house, and there's that great elm, and the people, the passersby would come, and for the most part, they would regard the stately manor, as decrepit as it was, and the old woman living inside, but she would sit and look out, and then there was that great elm. And so in this case, there's the man, the peddler, coming by with his cranking thing and his dancing monkey, and he's going to stop under the elm. Here we go. Try again. Epilogue. This was observable when one of those Italian boys came along with his barrel organ, or I think they would call these hurdy-gurdies, right? I mean, so it was a way that, it's a form of begging, excuse me, where they would come along, crank the hurdy-gurdy, sing a song, or get a dancing monkey. This was observable when one of those Italian boys came along with his barrel organ and stopped under the wide and cool shadow of the elm. With his quick professional eye, he took note of the 2 faces watching him from the arched window, and opening his instrument, began to scatter its melodies abroad. He had a monkey on his shoulder, dressed in a Highland plaid, and to complete the sum of splendid attractions wherewith he presented himself to the public, there was a company of little figures, whose sphere and habitation was in the mahogany case of his organ, and whose principle of life was the music which the Italian made it his business to grind out. In all their variety of occupation, the cobbler, the blacksmith, the soldier, the lady with her fan, the toper with his bottle, the milkmaid sitting by her cow, this fortunate little society might truly be said to enjoy a harmonious existence and to make life literally a dance. So stop at that paragraph. He's setting the stage, right, for all the world in the hurdy-gurdy realm, the mechanical thing. And he's sitting there in front of the elm with his monkey, and then the people from the story of his House of Seven Gables watching from above, including the old woman. The Italian turned to crank, and behold, every one of these small individuals started into the most curious vivacity. The cobbler wrought upon a shoe. The blacksmith hammered his iron. The soldier waved his glittering blade. The lady raised the tiny breeze with her fan. The jolly toper swigged lustily at his bottle. A scholar opened his book with eager thirst for knowledge and turned his head to and fro along the page. The milkmaid energetically drained her cow, and a miser counted gold into his strong box, all at the same turning of a crank. So imagine he's turning the crank, and all these little mechanical figures are doing their things, living their lives. Yes, and moved by by the self same impulse, a lover saluted his mistress on her lips. Possibly some cynic, at once merry and bitter, had desired to signify in this pantomimic scene that we mortals, whatever our business or amusements, however serious, however trifling, all dance to one identical tune, and in spite of our ridiculous activity, bring nothing finally to pass. For the most remarkable aspect of the affair was that at the cessation of the music, everyone was petrified at once, from the most extravagant life into a dead torpor. Neither was the cobbler's shoe finished, nor the blacksmith's iron shaped out, nor was there a drop less of brandy in the topper's bottle, nor a drop more of milk in the milkmaid's pail, nor one additional coin in the miser's strong-box. Nor was the scholar a page deeper in his book. All were precisely in the same condition as before they made themselves so ridiculous by their haste to toil, to enjoy, to accumulate gold, and to become wise. Saddest of all, moreover, the lover was none the happier for the maiden's granted kiss. But rather than swallow, and here's the last bit, the last sentence, but rather than swallow this last too acrid ingredient, we reject the whole moral of the show. Thank you, Nathaniel Hawthorne, for basically summarizing my whole book in 2 paragraphs. Man, I never tire of reading that. Okay, now the next bit is, next page is Ecclesiastes 9. You know, if you don't know, I'm a steady fan, big-time fan of the Bible. I read, even though I'm not a believer, I read the Bible every morning, 1 chapter a day. I have been doing that for years and years and years, and I just go read the Bible around and around and around. So I'm very familiar with the Bible, and I enjoy it greatly, and I study it every day. So so when I was writing the book, there was like bits and pieces from the Bible, and I've got bits and pieces of the Bible scattered throughout. But here's when I took all of Ecclesiastes 9 and added it in here, because it's another bad punch to the story, what I'm trying to say. Here we go, Ecclesiastes 9. So I reflected on this, and this is the New International Edition, New International Version. So I reflected on this, so I reflected on all this and concluded that the righteous and the wise and what they do are in God's hands, but no one knows whether love or hate awaits them. All share a common destiny. The righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, the clean and the unclean, those who offer sacrifices and those who do not. As it is with the good, so with the sinful. As it is with those who take oaths, so with those who are afraid to take them. This is the evil in everything that happens under the sun. The same destiny overtakes all. The hearts of people, moreover, are full of evil, and there is madness in their hearts while they live, and afterward they join the dead. Anyone who is among the living has hope. Even a live dog is better off than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even their name is forgotten. Their love, their hate, and their jealousy have long since vanished. Never again will they have a part in anything that happens under the sun. Go, eat your food with gladness, and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved what you do. Always be clothed in white, and always anoint your head with oil, even life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun. Meaningless life that God has given you under the sun, all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life, and in your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead, where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. Holy crap. So again, it's almost the identical sentiment as Hawthorne in the House of the Seven Gables. I mean, with the hurdy-gurdy, right? I mean, it's the same thing, but this time it's coming from the Bible. Backed with the signature of God, authorship of God, no less. And then I'll have another section here. This is titled Ghost Town. So about 3 years ago, I was contacted by a friend who had shared his copy of Going Alone. He lives in the LA area. Shared his copy of Going Alone with a gentleman. I think he was a professor, and the gentleman asked to meet me. So I went out and to meet him, and he wanted to talk to me. He had questions to ask me about Going Alone, which he said was a very significant book in his life, and he was quite taken by it, and he had a lot of questions for me, and he gave me a gift. He gave me a story called Ghost Town. It's very short. It's just 2 pages. He gave me Ghost Town, and I was so moved by his gift that he wrote me in return for Going Alone that I included it in the book. I think it's the very last thing, and it's deliberately anonymous. I left it completely anonymous because the sentiment that he gave me when we were talking was that his life was done. His opportunity, his chance had passed. He was becoming a ghost. He was unmarried, had no children. His career was over, and this is the sentiment that I gained from talking to him. And he was about to become a ghost upon his death, and not literally. I don't think he's. I think he's like me. He's an atheist like me. He doesn't believe in any soul or any afterlife. So he's going to. So we use the term ghosts in a sentimental, almost philosophic, artistic sense, right? Neither he nor I would believe that anything survives our death. But he wrote Ghost Town to me, and he called it Ghost Town because the setting for my book Going Alone is the Siberia ghost town. So here, let's read this anonymous man's work, and I do have a footnote here, footnote number 11, which I forgot. What did I write for footnote number 11? Oh, I'll read the footnote afterwards. Okay, here we go. Ghost Town. I recently bought 2 books on ghost towns. I have some others too. Remember, I didn't read this. I didn't write this. The gentleman wrote it. I recently bought 2 books on ghost towns. I have some others too. As I read in them a bit, I saw the ghost towns as a metaphor for my own life. I once had some action, in quotation marks, going on. It may even have appeared to others as though I was something special. People called me and I called them. I spent time with people for both business and personal reasons. People probably talked about me more than I would have liked, and I am pleased that I was not listening to. But people probably talked about me more than I would have liked, and I am pleased that I was not listening in. I would have been embarrassed, but now no one does. I have become a ghost town. People see me, but I have no meaning in their lives at all. Some stop by in the form of phone calls, and I do have a few correspondence left, but that's all the visitation I receive now. Even some of the correspondence I send does not get quickly returned. As with Bill, June, and Aunt Sally, both ladies have finally died. As with Bill, June, and Aunt Sally, both ladies having finally died. This all reminds me of Mr. Flood's Party by Edward Arlington Robinson. Call Me Ebb and Flood. If you haven't read that story, please read it. Mr. Flood's Party. Ghost towns are lonely places, especially at night, where the hotels and saloons once offered gaiety and diversion. The doors are permanently closed now, and electricity is no longer furnished. Houses which once gave shelter and witnessed family gatherings, and I dare say procreating, well, these houses only serve the needs of lesser creatures seeking shelter undisturbed. The streets are completely and regrettably safe to wander. No one will bother you. The entire town now may, in fact, legally belong to one person, and even he or she doesn't care what happens there. Wow. The place may be worth more if it burns down. Even the wood is too old for the fireplace. The oil and resins have evaporated, the life gone out of it. Good writing. There is no chance for recovery either. Hospice is not provided for ghost towns because it is futile. I think the town feels lonely most of the time. Some personal company would be most welcome, but moribund began long ago, and now the fact of death is ever present. So to offer any kind of succor at all would be wasteful in a society of disruptive efficiencies. And then he finishes with, I wonder what my name is. what a great way to close my story, with the inspiration of someone else at the end of his life, reflecting on what it all comes down to, and building upon what Emerson said. I'm sorry, not Emerson. Hawthorne said in the House of Seven Gables, in the quote there, and then of course Ecclesiastes 11. And the quote, the little footnote that I have here in the back says as follows regarding the ghost town. This short essay, Ghost Town, was given to me by a very learned and wise man in the last season of his life, writing about his experience, place, and circumstance. It is a cautionary tale, perhaps directed at the young who may yet be fooling themselves that there is ever time to come, and that relevance persists, and that someone will certainly be there to hear our tale when at last we are ready to speak. Speak now, for ghost towns are truly real. And I think that's the end, except for I have my recommended reading section. So these are all the books that I recommend. So basically, if I was to leave behind and I literally have these books. I think there's 18 of them. Yeah, I have these 18 books on a shelf in my bookshelf in my office. I have all the books that I want to read. I don't keep books. When I finish a book, I get rid of it. I give it away or something. And then I have up at the top, the only books that I keep are the 18 books listed here, which are my recommended readings. So let me read this last section here. Recommended reading. This section contains a list of my favorite books and titles, worth reading as a foundation to good thought and the pursuit of your own philosophy. I've listed the books in the order in which I would read them again. There are many more books I could recommend, though sometimes some books are enough. Some books are enough, as suggested by Seneca, and here's a quote from Seneca. You must linger among a limited number of master thinkers and digest their works if you would derive ideas which shall win firm hold in your mind. Yes! Here they are. Here's my top 18 books to read in the order in which I would recommend to read them, and it's listed in the book here. Walden by Henry David Thoreau at number 1. It doesn't mean it's the number 1, the best one. It just means it start off with Walden. 2, Cosmos by Carl Sagan. 3, and you'll notice that there's a mix in here of prose, philosophy, and science. Walden, Cosmos, The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, my favorite book of all time. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, the George Long translation. Definitely get the George Long translation. It's better than the rest. Moby Dick by Herman Melville. The Discourses by Epictetus. The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. The Epistles of Seneca. Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Read that one again and again and again and again. Get that one in rapid rotation. The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. The House of Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I'm sorry, that's the one that's my favorite, even better than The Scarlet Letter. Pilgrim at Tinker Creek by Annie Dillard, probably the only woman on my list. The Code of Hammurabi. And then the last few here start to take a religious turn. And I deliberately ordered them in kind of a chronological order leading up to the Bible, because I wanted to provide a foundation of the background text in the ancient Near East religious experience that would then kind of show some foundation for how the Bible came about. So I would say the Code of Hammurabi, the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian epic of creation, the Torah with commentary by Rabbi Rashi. You want the Rabbi Rashi commentary. If you don't have that, then you're not going to get the full picture, because a lot of Jews really do. It's like I don't know how to describe it. I mean, they turn to Rabbi Rashi all the time. So if you've got Rabbi Rashi in your back pocket already, you're already a long ways there. And then the Bible. And here's what I say about that. I say the King James and the New International Version. I know there's lots of versions. Those are the two that I prefer. And my way I do it is I read them both simultaneously. So I read one chapter a day, beginning at the front of the Bible and proceeding to the back, and then round and around again every day for all of my life. So, and then I read it together. So like this morning I read Amos 5, and I read it once in the NIV and then once in the King James. And actually what I do most of the time is I just read them simultaneously, reading and listening to one. And it's really good to do that. I used to do it. I read one, and then simultaneously. Sometimes if I'm in a hurry, I'll just do them all together. And it's really fun to do that because you can pick out the differences, right? Because you're reading it and you're hearing it in the two versions at the same time. And then two more, On the Nature of the Universe by Lucretius. And then finally finish off with On Man in the Universe by Aristotle. I put that dead last because Aristotle is tough. It's really hard to understand Aristotle. At least it's hard for me. So having Aristotle, if you can wait and do Aristotle at the very end, especially his ethics, then I think you'll be in a better position if you have all that other stuff in your back pocket already. And then after that is just the appendix, and that's the end of the book. I did it. I got to the end. I'm gonna go jump in the ocean. No, I won't go jump in the ocean. I'll save that for later, maybe. Thanks for making it all this way with me. I think I saw a comment or two. Let's see. Okay, what was the name of the translator by Aurelius? Oh, Kurt, is his version better because it was translated more accurately? For what reason? Good question, interpreter. It's George Long. No, it's I wouldn't. I can't speak if it was more accurate because I can't read the original, but I can just tell you that it reads really well. If you read other translators, okay, here's what it's like. It's imagine if Stephen King was translating a classic horror story of some sort in another language, right? And he knew that language and he was translating it. Stephen King is going to really do a good job of translating a horror classic, right, from another language, versus some dry academic who's doing the same thing. That's my experience with reading that in the George Long translation. It's like a great author. He's a translator, but he's also a really good writer, and it just spills out. And I've literally taken the two versions, like the dry version that I found, and then the George Long's translation, and read them side by side. And the one is like, oh, ho-hum, and wow, So it's really worthwhile, and it's a little bit hard to find. You have to search for it a little bit to find it. So, and I usually keep one or two copies around when I have them because I give them out like pancakes. So whenever I encounter somebody that I think might like it, here, you need to read this. Proselytizing my Marcus Aurelius. And with that, that's the end of that. So I think I am done for today. I'm going to wrap up here, and let's take a quick walk down to the water real quick, shall we? And then we'll wrap up. And then I'm going to go home to my wife, and we've got a day ahead of us to do all kinds of stuff. Oh, wave. Oh, it's looking nice. There's a little bit of trash on the beach because we had huge rain flows, and it spilled out huge floods down the rivers here, which don't get a lot of water here in Southern California, and then it spilled some trash out. Very nicely. Oh yeah, I'll be back this afternoon. Thanks, Kurt. I've got to note it down now. Have a good weekend, Leon. Goodbye, Leon. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the George Long translation. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend yourselves, whoever you are and wherever you are. Bye-bye. Oh, and you can get Going Alone. Duh. You can get a copy of Going Alone yourself from Amazon. Go to GoingAlone.org. I think there's a buy link at the top. That'll take you to my store. If you buy it from my store, then you'll get a signed copy and hand illustrated copy. It's a little more expensive. It's $25 versus like $18 on Amazon, but you get all the custom stuff. And I just did that because it takes time I have to order it, buy it, do all this stuff, and it just kind of helps to offset all those costs. But that's how you can get it. And you can have your own copy too. And take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.